Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to JK'z Rewatchable Hour presents The Walking Dead Files. I can't talk about The Walking Dead without talking about its origin, which was the comics. I have some of the comics, but I'm going to show you that I found like three ways to read the comics if you haven't read them. This is episode 1. This is issue number 1 of the comics. Now, when I found out about the comics and I wanted to read them, I told my oldest daughter about them, and she also told my niece about them. My daughter bought me several issues of the comics. My niece bought me The Walking Dead Compendium 1. There's 4 issues of Compendium 1, and it includes all 293 issues of the comic books. So she bought me 1 and 2. I looked. Now, if you're going to buy the compendiums, I found them online for like around $50. I don't know if you can get them cheaper somewhere or not, but I found them on the Kindle app for much less. I can't remember how much I paid, but it was much less than the 50. Now, the biggest difference with the comic and the compendium and on the Kindle app is I'm going to open to the first page. This is what page 1 in the compendium looks like. And this is page 1 of the comic. So the only difference is one's in black and white, one's in color, but they are identical. And what I kind of want to go through is I'm going to go through this, and I'm going to reference the comics a few times during the regular series. So here we go. They start off, it starts off, Rick and Shane have been called, have tracked down or stopped this guy who's escaped from a local prison that's a new prison. Now, a big difference is in the show Walking Dead, they're from Cook County, Georgia. They are from Tennessee in the comic. So they're small town cops in Tennessee. A lot less before they go to where the shootout happens. In the show, Rick and Shane have a whole conversation. In the comic, it starts off right there. And basically Rick says our backup is 10 miles out. I think it was 10 miles out. Yeah, he says they're 10 miles out. So there's no way, they're sitting ducks behind the car. So he says, I'm going to go over here to this. I'm going to try to make it to this ditch, cover me, get a better angle. We can kind of surround him. When he goes to head over there, the guy shoots him. The guy that they got in a standoff shoots Rick, and then end the scene. They go to, and then he wakes up just like the show. He wakes up in the hospital, after a coma. I know some places have said it's 59 days into the apocalypse. I don't know. I've seen where they talked about that, but so he wakes up after the coma, and he walks out, and he says something to he says, "Did everybody take a break at the same time?" Then when he walks out, he sees dead bodies. He sees, he doesn't know what's going on. He tries to use the phone. The phone doesn't work. But what's strange is in the comic, he uses the elevator to get down to the ground floor, which doesn't make any sense to me because there shouldn't be any power. Um, he goes to, he sees something stuck in a set of double doors. I believe it's just well, actually, when he comes out of the elevator, there's something that's there, a dead body. But he goes to the double doors of the cafeteria, and it just has like a 2x4 stuck in the doors. He pulls that out, and walkers get out, and he tells the guy, they look like human, only rotten flesh and whatnot. And he says, "Leave me alone, leave me alone. So, what's wrong with you?" And he escapes, and he gets down the staircase, gets out, and takes his belt off because he has put on. He found his police, some of his clothes, and he puts them on, and he takes the belt off, and he ties the two double doors together so they can't get out with his belt. Then he leaves the hospital walking, doesn't know what's going on outside. There's dead bodies and everything laying all over the place. Doesn't know what's going on. Makes it back to his house. Oh, he does stop. There is a key that he gets on a bicycle, and he does ride the bicycle. But the corpse he sees in the comic is like totally, like barely any flesh on it at all. You can see the bones and everything, but it's still moving and making sound, but it can't walk. So then he makes it to the house. He goes in, sees nobody's there, goes back out, doesn't understand what's going on. Then he gets hit in the head with a shovel, and that's Dwayne, Morgan's son. Morgan realizes he's not one of the dead. He's just, just a guy, he's alive. So they take him in, and when he wakes up, they offer him food. Unlike the show, they do not tie him up. They do not secure him. And he explains, he doesn't know what's going on, and they explain it. And he says, "Yeah, I've been in a coma. I was shot. I'm a former police officer." And Morgan explains that they were told to go to the major cities, that they would be protected at the major cities. So at that point, he says, "Well, my wife probably took my son Carl to Atlanta. That's where her parents are." And he says, "But I need to get some things before." He says, so Morgan gives him a ride to the police station. He has an extra set of keys and whatnot, and he lets, they go in, and then he unlocks the gun case, and he says, "I'm going to give you a couple of these for helping me out and giving me a ride." He says, "Just make sure you save enough for me." So he says, "Okay." And he says, "I'll be right back." Rick goes to his locker, and he has an extra uniform in his locker, and he puts that on, and he comes back into the room. And Morgan says, "Wow, that's a look." He goes, "Well, I was thinking if it'd be easier for me to get around Atlanta as a police officer, so I might as well fit the part. I might as well look the part." So, and Dwayne says, "Can I have one of the guns?" And Morgan says, he goes, "Not now." He goes, he's basically, you have to be trained properly, and you have to, in gun safety and everything. And Rick agrees that that's true. So then after they collect everything that they want, that they need, he locks everything back up, and he says, "I have one more surprise for you." They go outside, and he says, And Rick says, well, I'm going to take, this is the newer police car. He goes, but you can use that one. He goes, it's better than the hatchback you're in, as long as when everything's back to normal, you don't you don't put up a fight giving it back. And a walker comes up to the fence and Rick's going to shoot it. And Morgan says, it's not harming anyone. It can't get to us. And we're faster and smarter than that. No sense of drawing attention. It was a good idea. So Rick leaves heading toward Atlanta. Um, Several times, he has to stop, get gas off a thing, out of vehicles, and sometimes at a gas station. I don't know how he gets it, but there's one scene where he's kicking the gas pump and he goes, not again. But he finds gas somewhere and he goes a little farther. And now he's out in the country before Atlanta, closer to Atlanta than he was, and runs out of gas again. He takes his can and he walks up the road because he sees a farmhouse. He walks up to the farmhouse and he's like, I'm just going to ask him if I can get a little gas just to get to Atlanta. He knocks on the door. No one answers. He looks in. Actually, I think he goes in and he sees that they, and I like this term, they opted out. I like the term from the CDC episode where Dr. Jenner said opted out instead of suicide. I mean, I just like the opted out wording. So then he goes back outside, and it smelled pretty bad. And he's kind of, disgusted with the smell. And he goes out and he hears something. He goes to the barn, he opens it up, and there's a horse in there. He goes, oh my God, and he starts talking to the horse and he tells the horse, want to go to Atlanta? Ever been to the big city? And it's probably been a few days since he's talked to anybody, since he left Morgan. So he says, I want to go to the city. And then he starts talking about his son, about, like the day that his son was born and whatnot. And then he goes, okay, better idea. Well, how about we just don't talk? Because now it reminds me of what I'm going through. Rides the horse into the city. Now, the scene coming into the city is not as iconic as in the show. In the show, on the outbound side, there are a ton of cars just abandoned, almost like a big traffic jam. And on the inbound side of the city, there's nothing. It's not quite as dramatic in that, as in the show. There are cars that are abandoned and wrecked and whatnot, and he rides in. He comes around a corner and is surprised by a bunch of walkers. The horse gets spooked and knocks him off. He picks up the bag of guns and goes back to get the horse, but it's too late. The walkers are all over the horse, eating the horse. So he starts shooting to try to, get away. And suddenly, out of the middle of the walkers, a guy grabs him. It's Glenn. When we first meet Glenn grabs him and takes him into the alley. And he says, I can get you out. Takes him to the side of a building and he jumps up and he grabs the fire escape ladder and pulls it down. He goes, oh, look at that. First time. They climb up. And when they climb up the building, and he says, okay, now we got to go to the other building because the walkers are surrounding the building we just came up. But if we jump to the other building and go to the other side and go down, the walkers won't be there. They won't be there. So Glenn runs and jumps from building to building. Rick says, nope, not going to do it. I can't make that jump. And then he says, well, you have to, or else you're going to have to stay there. So Rick runs and jumps. And when he gets over, he barely makes it. And Glenn has to help him. And he says, well, you could have thrown the bag over before you jumped. He goes, nice telling me now. So they go down the other one and they get away. They run down the alley and they get away. And as they're leaving the city, they run into one of the dead, who's, one of the undead, I guess you would say. And, but he's just sitting there. And they even get up close to him and he makes a sound, but he doesn't get up to go after him because apparently some of them are in this state where if they aren't provoked, they're not going to come after you. So they leave. They leave the city, and as they're walking out, he said, they're talking about why he was in the city, what was going on, that his family was there. He goes, "Oh, well, the city got overrun rather quickly. I arrived late. We have a camp outside of town. A bunch of us do." He says, "But maybe your family didn't. Maybe your family didn't go into the city, or maybe they made it out because we have a guy in camp that made it out of the city after it was overrun." So, disappointed, they go back. He goes, "If they're not in Atlanta, though, I don't know where they would have gone." So they arrive at camp, and almost immediately he sees his wife and son and his partner, Shane. Um, Shane, they're all happy to see him, and they, say how worried they were and that the hospital was supposed to stay open. And he goes, "But apparently they must have left weeks after we did, a week or two after we left." And Shane shows him around, introduces him to some people, and tells him, if you want a shower, he goes, "You can use the shower in the RV." He goes, "Just don't take too long." He goes, "It's not the greatest water. It's pond water, but it's clean. It's clean enough." And then he meets Dale, and Dale tells him that Shane can't be trusted. He goes, there's something. He goes, he's done good at putting the camp together and keeping us all safe and whatnot, but he's kind of been eyeing your wife. He goes, "I wouldn't leave him alone with my wife if she was alive." And he goes, "Okay, note taken, you know." And then, the next day, him and Shane go hunting and looking for things. But ooh, not the phone. So while they're out hunting, the girls were, well, Lori and Carol were kind of excited about, the new laundry detergent. This is the day, the following day, and I forgot to mention that this was the night after and the morning after. And the girls were excited about the new laundry soap, hoping it made things smell better and whatnot. And on their way back, and Lori tells how they met, which she thinks is a pretty boring story and whatnot. And you start to see the weird relationship between Carl and Sophia. Um, and and then while Rick and Shane are out hunting, they come across a deer that's being eaten by a walker. And Shane says, "Do you think we can? Do you think we can eat around it? Do you think it can be safe to eat?" And Rick says, "I can't imagine the disease these guys are carrying, so we better not." When the girls are on their way back from doing laundry, they get attacked by a walker, just one. And Alan, who's Donna's husband, is sitting on top of the RV keeping watch. He can't get a clean shot. It just so happens to be Dale was chopping firewood, and he hacks off the walker's head. But then they realize that it's still alive, and so they shoot it in the head. That brings back Rick and Shane, and they find out about it, and everything's fine. But then during the night, Rick comes up onto the RV. Shane's up there watching, keeping watch, and he says, I don't think it's safe to be this. Rick says, I don't think it's safe to be this close to the city. And Shane's like, we're not moving in case they come, in case the military and the government figures out what's going on and comes back to help. They'll find us better at the city, closer to the city. He says, well, if we're going to stay here, we need more guns. And he makes a plan. He tells Shane, I'm gonna talk with Glenn. Maybe we can go in and get into a gun store into Atlanta and get some more guns. So the next morning he talks with Glenn. Glenn says, well, let's talk to him about it. What's his name? Jim. Let's talk with Jim. He's the one who came from the city. He lived in the city. And he tells him where the gun store is. And there's like, okay. And Glenn says, I have a map in the car. And while he's looking for it, Lori's having a problem with Rick wanting to go back into the city. And he says, well, Glenn helped me, so I don't want him. And if we both go, we can carry more back. So they make the plan to go back into the city. I'm gonna leave it right there because I'm gonna stop right there for a moment, for this episode. I think I want to start with as they're in the city because that's kind of a little bit, different, and they learn something while they're inside the city when they're going into the city. Thank you for watching. JK'z Rewatchable Hour presents The Walking Dead Files. I will be dropping another episode soon about the comics, and then I'm going to also be going into. I have an episode planned also to talk about after the CDC of the regular show. Thank you for watching. Like, follow, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time on The Walking Dead Files.